From our inception at the Vaihoek Wesleyan Church in Mangaung, Free State, on the 8th of January 1912, the ANC, then called the South African Native National Congress, has always fought to bring people together to fight against oppression and for the liberation of South Africa. So the ANC boldly asserts that we have not wavered from our pursuit of the National Democratic Revolution. All our programs, all our initiatives and actions are targeted at putting in place a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society. This brings to mind the question of what is the essence of the ANC? What is it about this ANC? The ANC was formed to deal with the terrible existential condition of black people and to serve the people of South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa in 1953 wrote in Drum magazine and gave what I call a succinct account of why the ANC was formed. He said the conditions under which Africans lived and worked, particularly in the northern provinces, he said, shocked Pixley Kaisa Kaseme and stirred in his mind to take action. In those days, the black man, that's what they refer to people as, was treated as a beast of burden. He was knocked and kicked about with impunity. In the magistrates' courts, his voice was hardly heard, and his evidence hardly believed. He was stopped at street corners by policemen demanding the production of his pass and his tax receipt. He was not allowed to walk on the pavement and had to dodge motor vehicles in the streets. He was not allowed to travel first or second or third class on trains. He traveled in trucks almost similar to those used for cattle and horses. His education in private primary schools, which were few, did not go beyond standard 3 and not beyond standard 6 in the training school, which were only 2 in the Transvaal and none in the Orange Free State. Politically, he had no voice in the making and administration of laws. Economically, he was kept in a state of abject poverty. These, briefly, were the conditions, he continues to write, under which the African people lived and labored when Alfred Mangena, Pixley Kaisa Kaseme, D. Monsiwa, and Msimang, a group of African lawyers, returned to South Africa from overseas. Their blood boiled as they saw the injustice and humiliation to which the African people were subjected. And in their patriotism, this made them see a vision of a united African people working together for their salvation. That's how Cyril Ramaphosa described the conditions that led to the formation of the ANC. As we gather here, it is important we should understand the reasons why the ANC was formed. It was formed precisely because of these existential conditions that African people were exposed to. But secondly, it was also formed to promote patriotism. Even as black people, the majority people in this country, were being rejected, were being treated as non-South Africans, they still have the deep quest to be seen as patriots. They had patriotism that was driving them, and they were able to put the country first and not their own interests first. The country came number one, and their own interests came last. The other important thing that led to the formation of the ANC was to promote unity. And Selope Tema continues to write that on the day the ANC was formed, he says it was a gathering of tribes that had never met before except on the battlefields. It was a gathering of chiefs, intellectuals, religious people, ordinary people who had never ever seen each other before. And you can imagine the scene on the 8th of January 1912, when people who had never met before, except a few, got together at the Vryhoek Church and decided to form this gigantic organization that we are all a part of today. They had come from the 4 provinces and the High Commission territories. Some had come from Swaziland, some from Lesotho, some from Botswana, which was called Bechuanaland, and some from as far afield as Zambia and today's Zimbabwe. It was a gathering of, yes, all those people who had never exchanged views before. It was a gathering, if I may say so, of the departed spirits, he writes, of the African race, among whom were such men as Sandile, Ushaka, Mushweshwe, Kwechwayo, Muroka, Khama, Sikukuni, Soshangana, and Ramabulana. So these were the people who gathered. As we gather here today, we are people who know each other. They did not know each other, but they had this great vision that could be crafted to form this organization. So vision was another important thing that brought all of them together. And they started crafting a clear vision of the type of South Africa that they wanted to see. And over time, this vision crystallized in a number of documents, the African claims, culminating in the adoption of the Freedom Charter. But the other important thing is that they then took action. They acted. And as they had formed this organization, they took action to put into action the words, the resolutions, and the decisions that they had taken. They acted through deputations, through pleadings, through speeches, through representations, through programs of actions, but then they started becoming bolder and bolder. When the Youth League was then formed in the 40s, when a program of action was adopted. And then they started protests and boycotts in the 50s. That resulted in a real collective action on their part, and then they started pushing the apartheid government to its very limits. That resulted in brutal responses from the apartheid government, which resorted to the most brutal ways of trying to stop the people's march to freedom. They resorted to killings, to jailing many people, to treason trials, to exiling a number of people, including Comrade O.R. Tambo. They embarked on house arrest. Umama Winnie Madikizela Mandela was put under house arrest. Umama Albertina Sisulu and many others were put under house arrest. They were banned. There were detentions without trial. There were judicial executions. Solomon Mahlangu was one of those who paid the ultimate price through being judicially executed. But there were also bombings to neighboring countries. There were massacres of enormous proportions. The Craddock Four we can think about, Bishop, Buipatong, Belt Hook, and many others. Through this, they thought that they would kill and stop the idea of freedom amongst our people. Led by the African National Congress, the spirit of freedom and the ideal of freedom never died. But little did they know that our people's quest for freedom had ossified into an ideology. You can never kill an ideology, even if you kill the leaders of the movement that subscribes to the ideology. We see such happening in other parts of the world today. When this was not heeded, they resorted, our leaders, our forebears, to armed struggle. And the ANC was then called a terrorist organization. It was a whole wide world ban on the ANC as a terrorist organization, but the ANC sustained the quest for freedom and embarked on 4 pillars of struggle: the underground, the armed struggle, international pressure, and mass mobilization. And much of it had adopted the new methods. Much of the leaders had adopted the new methods, and they were ready to engage the enemy on a whole number of terrains. And as the struggle, both international, as many countries started realizing the justification of our struggle, they then started turning around and imposed sanctions on South Africa, on apartheid South Africa. And the mass mobilization in our country, led by the mass democratic movement, obviously the underpinning organization was the African National Congress behind all this, although it was banned. It was the ANC that then decided that we now need to open another terrain of struggle, which was negotiations. The strategy of negotiations finally worked, and a breakthrough was achieved in 1993 when a beachhead was won, leading to the adoption of the interim constitution. Now, throughout this entire period, comrades, the ANC was in the steering wheel. The ANC, which has now existed for 112 years, was the leader of this whole process of enabling us to achieve our freedom. And that is why those who think ukuthi the ANC can be airbrushed out of existence, ukuthi ANC ingakhutshwa that easily, bayaphupha, because it's not going to happen. Because the ANC, which has led this whole process, has embedded itself in the hearts and the minds of our people. And through trial and tribulation, through ups and downs, we were able to prevail as the African National Congress, and we were able finally to overcome the 342 years of colonialism and apartheid. And it was only a breakthrough that we achieved in 1994. A breakthrough, comrades, that's how we characterized it. Sati, this is not a victory. It is a breakthrough. We have reached a beachhead moment. We have reached a point where now we can now march to greater achievements as we move on to improve the lives of our people. And the ANC prepared itself for all this after 1993 by crafting good policies that were meant to undo the damage that was done by colonialism and apartheid government. The ANC started getting ready, for it knew what the people wanted. It knew and it felt the pulse of our people. And then the leadership decided that we must now get ready to govern. And the Ready to Govern document was then drafted, was conceptualized. Now, after 30 years of governing, the ANC-led government has changed South Africa from what it was in 1994, Bayatanda, Noma Abatandi. The ANC has changed this country. As the 1994 ANC victory was a breakthrough, much still remained to be done. The outcomes census of 2022 and some objective studies, because there have been others who have done studies, some of which were released by our biggest detractors, those who don't particularly like us. All of them point clearly to the fact that the ANC has succeeded in changing the lives of the people of our country for the better. We have succeeded. We succeeded first in prosecuting a struggle for 82 years. From the time we were formed in 1912 to 1994, those were the years of struggle. It took us much longer than it took other countries. Other countries took a much shorter period. For instance, in Russia, it took them a much shorter period to get the Bolshevik Revolution to succeed. In China, the Communist Party of China, they started in the 20s, and then they succeeded in 1949. In Cuba, they also started much later. It took them much shorter. It took us much longer because we were arraigned against a formidable enemy. We were arraigned against an enemy that had support globally. They were supported by various countries. So we were waging war, not only against the apartheid government, but against many other forces globally. And that we were able to turn them around. President O.R. Tambo, waging the international struggle, turned them around, was in itself a great victory. And thereafter, we went on to win many more victories. And it is for this reason that we say we have succeeded in waging our own struggle. We have also succeeded in changing the lives of our people. Now, when the ANC speaks of uniting the people of this country, we do so secure in the knowledge that we are the organization best placed to unite the broadest cross-section of people behind the cause of building a better country. When you look at all these other organizations, zonke lezi ezivelayo, ezinye o-Mickey Mouse, ezinye o-Donald Duck, and so forth, zonke lezi ezivelayo, you can't begin to think of a single one that will be able to unite a cross-section of South Africans like the African National Congress. It's only the ANC that can do so. Now, our track record of building broad fronts in support of the cause of liberation and against the apartheid regime is the biggest example of the movement's capacity for building unity across different lines. Our principled commitment to ending a number of conflicts and having dialogue, even with our enemy, is another characteristic that stands us in good stead. Comrades, as we celebrate this birthday, we must pause. I do want us to pause and honor the lives of those who fell in the struggle in the last 112 years. There are many people who we owe our freedom to, and sometimes we never pause to think about them. We never pause to take off our hats to them and say thank you. Thank you for engaging in struggle. We never pause to say thank you, President John Langalibalele Dube. We never pause to say thank you, Mama Lillian Ngoyi, Siyabonga, ukuthi you sacrificed so much so that today we can enjoy this freedom. For that, I want us to stand up and honor those who struggled to get us where we are. Let's stand up and observe a moment of recognition in silence. Sige sithule sithi cwaka. For a minute, sikhumbule labo who died for our freedom, who suffered in jails, who were hung, O Solomon Mahlangu, O Vuyisile Mini, and many others. Those who died in exile, those who died in prisons, the Credit 4, Buipato, and many others. Let us pause for a minute and remember them, and then quietly say thank you for what you did to bring us to where we are today. And say thank you to the African National Congress for leading this struggle to where we are today and making this country a better country. Thank you. Comrades, what we have just done is an important tradition. And National Chairperson Usase Uslalo, while the organization for the next few years, let this be a tradition. We do observe a moment of silence. Situle siti kwaka. Sikumbule labo who suffered. This morning, we had occasion as NEC members, as well as provincial leaders, to go around the province on the revolutionary pilgrimage. This is a new tradition that we have also introduced. On January 8th, moment or week or so, we will go in the province where January 8th is being held. We will go to our former leaders, either departed or still living. We will also go to their families and go and pay homage and go and pay our respects. And yes, we will go to the graves of our past leaders. And this morning we went to various places. I had the privilege of going Wababu Inos Mabuza and Saya Emdeni Wake, and we saw his wife as well as members of the family. We then had occasion to go to the gravesite, to go and put a flower, to have the grave cleaned and put a flower or flowers on the grave. And this was quite an important sacred moment for us to remember those who have contributed to our struggle. And we were, in a way, besishukumisa amathambo. We were shaking the bones. And as it is said in Ezekiel 37:7, Comrade Nomvula, ndiyayazi iBhayibheli. 37:7, kuthiwa ushukumisa amathambo, get the bones to shake, and that the spirit must then come in. And we did that so that we can gain inspiration. Inspiration from having gone there. Inspiration from spending a moment with the families. And so that for us was an important moment. And it's important that we then had breakfast with the families, as you heard. Comrade Speedy Mashilo was reading out the names of the families, of those families who have contributed, whose members have contributed. And we thank them. Sathi siyabonga ukuthi you sacrificed so much, the members of your own families, and enable them to come and serve the nation. So we thank those who have come before us, and today the ANC has worked very hard from its first ANC-led government. It has worked very hard from its very first day in office to begin the process of changing the lives of our people. Now, those who crafted Census 2022 testified to that. And the president of the Youth League was giving an account of all that. And I've been very proud to listen to young people, as articulated by the president of the Youth League. Ngoba usasemncane wayengekho when all these things enzeka. Kodwa he has a very good grasp of what his organization has done, how this organization has changed the lives of our people. The other day I went to where my grandmother used to live, right in the rural areas, where there was never any thought that there would ever be electricity there in Limpopo or any form of running water. Today, they have electricity in my grandmother's house. Today, they have running water in my grandmother's house. And comrades, this is the case for 95% of our people. We are the only country on the continent, including a number of countries outside our continent, in various places, Asia, South America, and so forth, who have a penetration of electricity up to 95%. The ANC, which has done that. We have our literacy level. When we got into power, the literacy levels, the literacy levels was very low. Now the literacy level in our country is about 89, 90%. Abantu bethu bafundile bayakwazi ukufunda. It's happened because of the ANC. When you look at ages 15 to 24, the literacy level is 100%. Our young people know how to read and write. Yes, there is a challenge of imisebenzi. We know that that is the main challenge, and that is why we are working so hard to create job opportunities, and that is why we also welcome and listen to the proposals from the Youth League, from the women of our country as well, as to how we can empower the young people in our country through getting jobs, how we can economically empower the women of our country as well. Over the last 30 years, the ANC has made tremendous strides in empowering women. The president of the Women's League standing here, she says they are beneficiaries. The women of our country are beneficiaries of the policies that have been adopted by the ANC itself. Masicabanga kahle le 50% representation beyingekho nala kwa ANC. Ikhona manje, there's no structure that will not have 50-50. If it's there, it's an illegal structure. So women have been empowered. And at the same time, the empowerment has gone beyond even just the ANC. In Parliament, the ANC is the most representative one when it comes to gender parity. And there aren't many parliaments in the world where there is such a greater representation of women in their top structures. And we have also enacted laws of employment equity, broad-based black economic empowerment, and those have enabled women to have greater access to employment, business, and investment opportunities. It is our duty to challenge employers to ensure that women receive equal pay for equal value of work as well. There must be equality in payment in the private sector especially. And if there is inequality of payment in the public sector, let us report, because we will make sure that there is equality of payment amongst women and men as well. So we want to encourage the private sector to also take steps, even better steps, to empower the women of our country. We are, and this is one of the great successes of the ANC-led government, we have taken the challenge of gender-based violence with both hands, and we are making progress. We are committed to eliminate gender-based violence as it affects all of us. Our organization is unapologetic with regard to support for the LGBTQIA+ community. We are also in full support of enabling people with disabilities to get positions, and we are saying, oh masipala bethu, oh provincial government bethu, even at national government, employ people with disabilities, including people who are living with albinism. Let them get in. We are the only organization that champions the cause of those people. We are also a democratic organization, and we are here as the ANC to protect democracy. Internally, we continue to perfect our processes of electing leadership and representatives for legislatures. Now, as comrades are aware, these processes are not without their own challenges, but we continue to attend to these challenges. We adopted at conference that people who have been charged should step aside. That was a conference resolution, and that has led to the improvement, internal improvement of electing people. We now need, as Comrade President of the Veterans League, to extend it to public representatives as well, so that at that level we must be sure that we are going to be led by people with integrity, and we must deal with corruption and really deal with corruption in an effective way. The renewal and rebuilding of our movement is beginning to bear fruits. We are beginning to see it. We continue to focus on rebuilding branches and other structures to improve their functionality. A few months ago, the Youth League, for instance, had gone on for years without a legitimate national and provincial structure. The Youth League has gone to its conference. That is why a president of the Youth League can stand here confidently and articulate the views of young people. And that message is spreading around the country. The Women's League also needed to go to conference. It has gone to conference. The Veterans League, sengisho ukuthi nesanko ivukile isanko, and siyabonga. So that, comrades, is the process of renewal. we are renewing ourselves. The process of dysfunctionality and disunity in the ANC was making us weak. And now I can testify that we are much stronger now. The ANC is much stronger than it was a few years ago. Labo abayidelelayo i-ANC abakaboni lutho. Bazosithola kahle because we are stronger now. As the Mpumalanga province said here, the Mpumalanga province has become so much stronger. There is so much unity, and that has spread to other provinces as well. And that, comrades, is the work of renewal. The leadership here in Mpumalanga is united. We can see that, and we can see in the level of how the branches function as well. And the same is spreading throughout the country, and others are also going to come into the crawl. Now, Bebabe as strong as that. So the lifeblood of the ANC, comrades, is our people. We must, as the ANC, remain rooted in the 112th year of our existence. We must remain rooted in our communities, for we were founded to serve our communities. And it is for this reason that the ANC has been and will continue to strengthen its efforts to ground our organization where it truly belongs. And we will continue, comrades, to protect and to strengthen our democratic institutions in all areas. And the ANC government will work harder to strengthen a number of areas that are challenges at the moment. It could be crime and corruption, because that is an area where we need to strengthen our resolve and demonstrate to our people that indeed we are prepared, willing, and ready to solve these problems. This morning, as we were leaving the homestead in Mama Mabuza, I met workers from Lily Mine. They were standing there with placards, and they were saying, President, sisasene problem yase Lily Mine. And then they asked a question, ukuthi President, sizavota kanjani uma sisase nale problem? Ngoba le problem izasivimba ukuthi siyovota. So I said to them, nge problem yona le which we are addressing, ngathi former acting president for a moment uzawuya as Minister of Minerals and Resources, uzawuya ayobabona. And then I said to them, yes, this is a problem, because there are problems. There are many problems. It could be load shedding, it could be a problem yamanzi, it could be a problem yemgwaqo, it could be a problem yokungasebenzi and so forth. Ngeti, that one problem, and there could be two. It should not make you say that you are not going to vote, because if you don't vote, then you don't strengthen the very organization that is doing many more things. This organization is doing many more things. It has led in ensuring that abantu bethu 18 million people bathola ama grant. It has ensured ukuthi nale 350 noma incane iba khona for 11 million people. It could mean ukuthi abantwana batholi iNSFAS if you weaken this organization. Ngoba la amanye amaqembu asazi ukuthi bona whether they will have the determination that we have heard, the bravery and the courage that President of the Youth League was talking about, whether they'll have it to continue solving the problems of our people. We have addressed to solving those problems from 1912, getting the freedom, changing the lives of our people. And today, Sithi Masiqhube, even as we have problems, This is the only trusted organization that can make sure ukuthi the problems are solved. And then I said, Minister Mantashe uzawuya lapha eLili Mine to go and see further how those problems can be solved. So we are proud, comrades, that as a democracy, we have been able to hold 6 free and fair elections. We will do everything in our power to ensure that the upcoming 7th national and provincial election is also successful, because we are a democracy. You know, when the whole world looks at us, they look at us with envy. But you South Africans have succeeded to have the best constitution in the world. You have succeeded to build a democracy where there was no democracy. You have succeeded to have human rights where there were no human rights. We are a reference point to the whole world when it comes to the issues of human rights. But we are also a reference point in terms of making a stand on a matter of principle, to struggle, to support the struggles of other people who are subjected to exactly the same challenges that we had. The people of Palestine today are being bombed, they are being killed, and there is apartheid there in Israel today, and we were duty-bound to stand up and support the Palestinians. And that is why we have taken the government of Israel to the International Court of Justice. There is genocide lapha Israel. And we do this, comrades. We do this, and some people say it's risky. We are a small country, we are a small economy. Bangasuka basihlasele. Kodwa we are saying we stand on principle. And we were taught by the father of our democracy, who said, our freedom will not be a true freedom unless the people of Palestine are free as well. So that is exactly what we stand on. So we were taught by the great Nelson Mandela, and that is why we support them. And that is why our foreign policy has become as progressive as it is now, where even in very faraway countries, we are able to make an intervention to act out the principles that we were taught. We were taught that negotiation is the best way to solve disputes. We were taught by O.R. Tambo, the great Nelson Mandela, and many others. They taught us to resolve disputes through negotiations. That's why we packed our bags and went to Ukraine and Russia to go and plead for peace. And that moment is forever recognized globally. Over to South Africa, together with other countries, African countries, came out in support for peace and making sure that the people of those countries also live in peace, so that the impact that that war is having on us is lessened. A prosperous society is one of the key visions that the founders of the ANC had, where people's lives would be better. And that is exactly where we are following in their footsteps. Whilst prosperity is measured in economic terms only, the ANC sees it in broader terms. We look at prosperity in a broader perspective, because a prosperous people are people who are free from poverty, and the ANC government has done tremendous work over the last 30 years to free people from poverty. I made a statement last year and said that we have reduced the incidence of poverty from high levels, and it is coming down. And it is coming down, comrades, because almost 60% of our budget is to address poverty, to support the lives of our people. And Other people then challenged it. But you know, President Mpumalanga, ANC government has not reduced the incidence of poverty. They went to an organization, Fact Check, and the ANC-led government has indeed reduced the incidence of poverty in South Africa, and not many countries can claim to have achieved that. So in what ways have we done it? Our policies have been pro-poor. As the comrade Kosatu was saying, they've been pro-poor, and we have done a great deal, for instance, in the provision of grants. I don't know of any other country on our continent that has committed itself so much to 18 million people who receive grants, young and old, as well as an additional 10 million, if you like, who get grants of 350. And today, all those people are assisted and supported by our government. And I've already dealt with issues of water and electricity. Electricity is still a challenge, let's admit that. Load shedding is still a challenge, but we are going to solve a problem, your load shedding. We are bringing more and more megawatts onto the system, and Nina Lapa Mpumalanga, the whole nation needs to stand up and thank you for being the province that lights up the whole country. Siyanbonga ngama power stations wenu. We have made progress. Is 30 years enough? My answer to that is 30 years is not enough. We need more time, but at the same time, we must continue working and dedicate ourselves, which is precisely what we are doing. So this we can only do if the ANC remains a trusted servant of our people, continuing the partnership between the ANC and the people to ensure that we do, in the end, achieve the national democratic society that we all want. So we look forward to continuing with this work. And comrades, that is the message that we are going to be taking to our people as the election campaign intensifies. Yes, we will say, look at our record in the last 30 years. If you like, you can look at it in a shorter period. You will find that the ANC has done well. It has the experience to do well. It has the leadership to do well. It has the structures. It's an ANC that leads, and it's an ANC that lives. As we enter the campaign, the message that we will be putting out there is, yes, we see all these other parties that are coming up and have come up. We are prepared to take them on. And comrades, let's have that spirit. Ogoti, we belong to a great legacy of an organization that was founded 112 years ago. And today we celebrate this great legacy, and we say, happy birthday, African National Congress. Happy birthday. Amandla. Amandla.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king, I think I'm a king,